Hello everyone, Lewis Weber here for TPS 4x4 version 644 training. Thanks for being with me today. During this segment I'm going to talk about customizing academic blocks. Now in an earlier segment I already discussed how to establish the default academic blocks using the Setup tab. And what this is going to do is assign every student these academic blocks, not that we know for sure that they're going to use them, but because it's convenient to do that and to make the changes as you need to. So this keeps you from having to type these in or copy these in for each student yourself. TPS makes the assumption that at least some of your students are going to have the same academic blocks. So you'll note, let's just scroll it up to the top here. You'll note that Pete has these academic blocks, but Corey does not. So Corey's academic blocks are different. Where do we enter those in? Well, you enter them in right here on data entry. Instead of establishing a separate area for it, given that they're going to be assigned to each student, it was just more convenient to use the data entry tab for making those changes. And I wanted to show you how to do that. Okay, so if we had not yet entered anything for Corey, these academic blocks right here for Pete would have also shown up for Corey as well and for everyone else. To make the change, it's very simple. You just click on it and you enter the new change. So let's say we're going to say rides bicycle to school. Okay, there it is. And what's going to happen is you'll note that it just changed the next day and the next day and so forth. So whatever you enter is going to be the default going forward. Simple enough. So just go to data entry, find the student that you are interested in, and enter their specific academic blocks. That part's easy enough, and you do that as soon as you know them. And you can enter them any point before your data collection or on the first day for that matter. And TPS will adjust all subsequent academic blocks. Now sometimes the sequence of academic blocks changes. I have found this to be the case as I work in many classrooms. For example, centers changes from the morning to the afternoon for lots of reasons. Now what we do not want to do is we do not want to then go to, let's say, this particular day, okay, 8:31. Let's say that centers has now been moved and switched with recess. We don't want to change that. It's not that important to change the academic blocks if the sequence changes, because TPS is going to be analyzing data based on this cell, not on what the cell says. So in other words, when TPS looks across days, it's going to say what's in cell, the third academic block cell, and look at the third academic block cell for the next day and the next day. Okay, it's not going to first figure out where centers are in the day. So if centers has become something in the afternoon and switched with some other academic block, just go ahead and leave it there. And when you have data for centers, just go ahead and put it on that row. Don't move centers to a later part in the academic sequence. And the reason why is because TPS then has centers in two different locations, and it makes the data less rigorous. So we want to leave it there because what's more important about the academic block is what the academic block is, not as much when the academic block is scheduled. So yes, we do want to install these names of our academic blocks according to chronological sequence. So this is the first period, second period, and third period. But when those change, and they often do, just leave these where they are. So that way when we look at old data, even though the centers was not the third academic block, we are going to be able to analyze behavior during centers whenever it happened to have occurred. So that's something that's important to note. Another thing that's important to note about academic blocks is that we do want to fill up all 10 of these because more data is better. But that doesn't mean we're going to record data every day. We might want to record data. Let's just go down to some blank cells later on in the year. Okay, let's put that in the middle for Corey. Okay. I might only want to record data during centers, for example, on a given day, and ignore all the rest. And I could actually X out all of those unused cells, and that would be a fine thing to do if I wanted to just record data during centers. Depending on how you are tracking your data, if you're using X's and N's to fill in every cell, then you of course would want to take advantage of the X's and fill in X's for all the cells that you are typically not going to use. So if we were just to record during centers for Corey, we would of course fill in X's for all of these cells, and I'm doing this as we speak. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little bit of quick copying here. All right. And now what we have, of course, we'd also do X's over here, wouldn't we? We would just do it just for centers. So we could do that if we wanted to, just record behavior during centers. Alternatively, depending on how you're doing it, we could just also leave those extra cells blank. But in a previous segment, I did recommend that we do fill these cells with something. But you may not even want to record behavior every day. Depends on your need. TPS allows you to do that. TPS doesn't have holes in the data like some data systems do. If you don't collect data, it's simply ignored. It doesn't create a hole. It just creates a non-existent data set. So we don't worry about it. So let's say on 5/23 you recorded some data. Let's just do that, and let's just say we had a pretty good day. Okay, and then the next day maybe you were not going to record any data at all. So if you wanted to, you could put no data, just so that you know it wasn't because the student was absent. And then you can record data maybe on the next day if you wanted to, and put in something that you want. Let's say we had a better day, and maybe we had a little bit of problem there. All right, so you get to decide where you want to collect data. Do not feel obligated to collect data every day and for every academic block. TPS is very flexible. You get to decide how much data you want to collect. Okay, now, if at some point, let's say computer time on 5/23, for the end of course that's almost at the end of the school year. Let's say computer time was no longer available and something else took its place. You could put in that new academic block because computer time was no longer available. My recommendation is to just leave it alone. So let's go back to before we entered in all those X's. So if perchance you were no longer going to be using computer time, then you could put an X there. Let's say you were going to use these other cells. You would X out that entire row and say, you know what, going forward, we're not going to use computer time anymore. And that's okay. It's not necessary to record students' behavior during every academic block. It's advisable and it's preferred that you do so because more data is better, right? But if computer time was no longer available because you're just not going to have it anymore, then just exit out and do not do anything else. In some cases, the computer time, as I noted, may change. We're going to leave it alone. This is talking about when something totally stops being offered. Sometimes we like to have a miscellaneous cell, and we might establish that in the very beginning of the school year. So let's go in fact do that. Let's go at the very beginning, and instead of dismissal, let's put the last cell as miscellaneous. Now we're not going to know what that is on a given day from miscellaneous. It's going to change, right? But it's always going to be the 10th cell, and it's always going to be miscellaneous. And then what we can do on whatever day we're collecting data, we can, instead of say hit a dismissal, well, we could leave that, or We could say it was art class or whatever it was, and it would tell you what that miscellaneous academic block was. So that's another way as a catch-all, and that could occur during any time of the day, right? It doesn't have to be the last cell of the day or the last academic block of the day. It's just one that could occur at some point. Okay, well, I think that pretty much covers what I have to say about academic blocks today, so let's put a bookmark in this. Again, my name is Lewis Weber, TPS Training. Thanks for being a part of that, and I look forward to the next segment.